episode, you'll hear artist Hannes Bend discuss his practice and what Hannes is doing. There are a handful of artists that I know of personally across the world are, are engaging with human beings on the level of consciousness, on the level of evolution. And I don't say this lightly. Their work is what I would call sacred. Not all of it is obviously sellable, but their experiences have touched many lives, and at the end of the day, that's the highest form of art that I can think of. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Hannes as much as I did. What I love about Anchor is that it's given me creative control of my own material. I was approached by a big company to do a podcast about the art world, and I didn't want to sign over all rights to them. Anchor has allowed me to make this podcast and to keep creative control as well as financial control in terms of advertising. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free. You can use it on your phone or your computer. There are tools that help you to upload your recordings that you've done separately or on the app. They'll distribute it for you as well, which again, I couldn't wrap my mind around distribution, and they have it all there for you in one place: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and many more. You can easily make money from it as well. They help you advertise. As you can see right now, I'm getting my first ad out through Anchor. And all you have to do is download the app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Good luck with your podcast and getting your voice out there and owning your content. Hi, today we're speaking with artist Hannes Bend. Is that correct how I pronounce your name?
Yes, thank you. Hello.
And tell us where you're from. Where were you born or where you grew up?
I grew up in Norway and Germany and was born close to Hamburg, and actually grew up in tiny little villages of 200 to 300 people. So very rural.
Wow. I mean, there was a report out recently about the best places to raise kids. I think America was number 15 or 16 or 18 or somewhere down there. And Norway and I can't remember, I think Denmark and one other, Sweden, were up there like the top 1, 2, 3. So you probably lived a very great, safe, healthy childhood.
Yeah, I would say so. I had birth trauma, so until that was resolved not resolved, but until I dealt with those with the impact that had. But my childhood was like nice. I never felt, I was bullied at school, but I never felt threatened in like everyday life, or I had to learn about anti-Semitism and racism only much later. But it was also very homogenous there. So
what
I'm
about
curious.
Birth trauma?
I had I almost died at birth, and I was diagnosed with mild cerebral palsy. So I was supposed to not be able to walk. But my parents were advised to do a very rigorous physiotherapy called the Voita method, so I could learn how to walk. So my parents were kind of doing that on a daily basis for almost the first year of my life, and help my brain kind of connect with the muscle parts and different body parts. So I was able to learn to walk, but I was crying every day because of the pain of the physiotherapy. And so as a mother, you probably can imagine how impactful that must have been for my parents. And I don't have any conscious memory about it. Yeah. But my father still can't hear a baby cry because it reminds him of back then. But then they provided me a very safe childhood and a very nice home somewhere in this little village. I had a lot of nature around me and kind people.
But when you say anti-Semitism, yes, And when you grew up, you said you found out about things like anti-Semitism, but you're not Jewish, are you?
No, I'm not. No, no,
Yeah.
just the notion that people judge each other based on where they're coming from or how they look like. That was something I had to learn later because my parents and the environment I grew up in wasn't a thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, tell us then how you developed and got out of that 300 town situation to this like what 18? I don't know how many people are in New York now, like 10 million people
Yeah, right.
city or something.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
depends on
how
the
did you get
suburbs or
here?
something.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Berlin for 10 years, the
Mm-hmm.
second largest Turkish city in the world. Just kidding. No, it's like, I'm joking with my Turkish, I was
No, but it's
joking with
true
my,
in a way.
yeah, I was joking with my Turkish friends. They said, "Oh, what is it, Ankara?" And I say, "No, it's Berlin." Because there's so many Turkish people. So I lived there for 10 years
Yeah.
and then I got an artist visa here. So I've been here for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, then they gave me a green card here. So
Mm-hmm.
I kept staying here. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
And
but
tell us now what your
yeah,
practice looks. Well, go ahead, but you tell me, but you.
my practice,
But
well, I
no,
am
but tell me
very,
what you were gonna say.
yeah, no, I think, I was always been very curious. So Berlin was interesting, but it was also kind of homogenous and a little bit removed from maybe a lot of problems the rest of the world has. And I was curious to come here to the US and I could also expand my creative and curious endeavors, I guess, just to look at what does it mean to be a human being and an artist in this world, and how can I be of service and contribute to a more humane world and a better place. So that's, I think, what I was able to work more on here. Because in Berlin, it was just a lot of art world centric practice and kind of
Mm-hmm.
fitting into what gallerists might want to see or curators might want to see and who you know and so. And in the
Mm-hmm.
end, I think the art world, I found, at least like the commercial aspect of it, is a very hyper capitalistic world. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
literally, we were just talking before this call, like, briefly on like legality things. I think one artist mentioned to me the art world is the only place where you can legally do insider trading and market manipulation and a lot of things, and it's really true. And so there's a lot of like that, and I've seen so much of that, and you can even write about it anywhere, and it's well known, and
Yeah.
nobody would be held accountable because there's no laws regulating that, and it's very sad in that sense because I think there's a lot of good artists out there who are not getting the recognition because they're not interested in that kind of market dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so here I don't know, I got some supports with some grants, art science grants, and now I'm at the New Ink Incubator, which is the only museum-led incubator program in the world, maybe, from the New
Mm-hmm.
Museum in Soho. So I'm working out of there almost every day, which is a great
Mm-hmm.
program. And then yeah, and then I have different mediums I work with, but I'm always very interested in how an artwork can help somebody see reality in a different way, and how an art practice can also um yeah make bridge more connections between well-being and humans and the planet.
Well, I
Yeah.
really, really, really love that. And I'll tell you why later, but tell us exactly what you're doing now. What does your artwork look like? What does your practice look like? What are you doing every day when you wake up and you go out there? I mean, I have an idea, but let's have the listeners hear it too.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm working on a long-term art project, but I'm also running a company. As part of that, it's kind of interesting that I would almost consider the business could be just very, productive on its own. It's called breathing.ai, and it offers stress
Mm-hmm.
reducing technologies to people. So when you look at a screen, that the colors, the brightness, the fonts are right now not changing, but our technology learns how to change it based on biometrics. So we use a smartphone camera and or the webcam to detect heart rate or neurological activities, basically how our nervous system works, and then seeing when you're texting, for instance, what if our app would be installed or our interfaces, it would learn like on a chat app what colors or what brightness would be more calming for you. You know, so you write a text and then maybe sometimes it's gray, maybe sometimes it's blue, or sometimes it's, you know, purple or something. So whatever it is in that moment, so that's what our technology does. But I'm working on this like a long term. Got a patent also for this, so it really extended for a few years now into the business and science and technology realm. But I'm also, that's part of an art project I want to realize where you have like a whole, like two rooms. The art was called Heaven or Hell. And then you walk into a room and you have the whole room is kind of your nervous system's heaven in a way. So you would have your heart rate detected, your breathing patterns detected by our technology or by an AI technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence. And then it would learn what's the most calming colors and visuals and audio and smells. So you would be in one room where you have a display of visuals, of audio and smells that is most calming for your nervous system. So it's like it's a whole like an installation, a room where you would just like have an experience that nobody else would have because it's your unique nervous system, your unique mind body. And then you could also have the opposite effect where it's just AI would learn what's the most stressful experience for you. And then display all of those very stressful images and visuals, and audio for you. So that's like part of it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm working with AI, machine learning, and a lot of technologists on this, and it comes out of years of neuroscience research on meditation, on visual stimuli, which is part of an artist residency, or a few artist residencies actually I've done. And the past 5 years, and as part of those, we developed a few virtual reality and augmented reality biofeedback projects, which I think were still kind of novel in technology as well as in art and science. So, but I didn't want to add any more screen time to people's lives, so any more wearables. So, because living here in New York, it's already so much, and I feel a lot of. I always like asking myself, what is an experience, art visitor, like art people who consume art or like visit artworks and can have that is truly novel in terms of mediums and in terms of like what is novel within society, and how can that help them expand their sense of reality, and how can it help them to feel maybe more integrated and alive in this world and reality. Because I think that notion of consumption is very prevalent in the hour where you go and you rate it, you judge it like yes or no, and I like it or don't like it, and it gets consumed, versus having an actual experience, which oftentimes resonates with in artworks of Tino Segal or other artists, where you go and you actually have a novel experience, and there's a level of curiosity in there, and yeah, you might see and sense something in a way that you haven't sensed before, and thereby maybe you connect more with being alive, and then afterwards maybe people have the motivation to do something kinder for each other and the planet. Because I did a lot of art projects on environmental catastrophes in Miami, and a lot of other topics regarding like how negatively the human species impacts this planet. But I was oftentimes felt a little bit like cleaning up or so, and informing people about the negative consequences. So I became more drawn to what I can actually do creatively, and that helps people to maybe do something about it.
Right. And I mean, in your day-to-day, you often have these meetings with people. I know these breathing exercises they do outdoors, sometimes in cold weather to warm you up, and very often in touch with the earth. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I have a meetup group with over 400 members called Breathe NY, Breathe with an E. It's called Breathe NY, Healthy, Happy, and Harmonious, or so, breath work. So I've trained with Wim Hof, the Iceman, who's the guy who can control his body temperature. And I think the first world record he set in front of the Rubin Museum in 2010 in New York, where he was submerged in ice cubes up until his throat, and he was able to maintain his core body temperature for an hour. So he was just literally in ice cubes and was totally fine afterwards. Just had a little bit of red skin, I think. And then he derived that also similar to a lot of other people who had trauma and depression and anxiety. His wife passed away, so he was alone with 4 kids in his 30s. So he started to jump into cold water and learn different yogic and breathing practices. So I've done a lot of meditation and yoga for many years. I'm an instructor, so I do it on the side. I guided at WeWork headquarters, at Google in offices, but I also in preschool. So yesterday, actually, I was at like a kind of for kids for like, I think they were between 2 or 6. So yesterday morning I was guiding it for some young kids and toddlers. And, but I also do it in Elizabeth Street Garden with my meetup group and other places. And I've learned from Wim Hof and other people. And I think it's just the deeper breathing oftentimes helps people just to feel more energized, and then just like a letting go exhale would just like help us to release things. So I found a lot of benefits for my own personal life. So I've guided thousands of people and museums as well, and all ages. So I always love to share those beautiful breathing techniques, because especially in New York, it's hard for people to go to a yoga class or a meditation class. It's somewhere else and it takes another hour or two, but I think we can always engage with our breathing. It's always something that is available in every moment to help us feel better. So I love to share those practices. And it's like so easy for kids sometimes to pick it up, and I find it funny, and because they can change their feelings, which oftentimes adults takes them a while to get out of their mind and kind of re-engage with their body and feel more embodied. But kids, they oftentimes, as you probably know, they always want to be entertained, feel alive, and change their emotions and feel good. So kids, when they do deep breathing, actually it's very it's fun for them. So, and then combining the breathing exercises with animal noises and stuff like that, they like that, but adults like it too. So it's like I love to do that.
I can imagine it's fun. I mean, if I tell my son, let's go and meditate, he'll be resistant. He'll be like, no, no, no. But then if you put it in the context of some playing, I'm sure he would be more open to it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like the meditation, because then it's kind of like not thinking something, but as soon as they do something and they feel different, and they feel maybe a little bit lightheaded, they feel like more alive, then it works. So there's different types of things I found out that they really enjoy, and it's also the time of the day. Sometimes they're just like too active to get them to meditate or breathe,
to settle down.
But sometimes I do more of a workout with some kind of fun yoga exercise, and then they get their workout, and then bringing them back to meditate at the end of the session. And then I had beautiful 5 to 10 minute, like super silent meditations with literally toddlers with ADHD and diagnosed with ADHD. I mean, it's obviously like a weird label to have for them, but it's sometimes very beautiful to see how it can work. For sure.
Well, I like the idea too when you bring the people outside, like in New York, even to Elizabeth Street Garden, because just connecting with a little bit of nature must help them as well with this whole breathing, meditation, blah, blah, blah stuff. And that's why I wanted to speak to you about what you work on, because recently I was reminded that all of this art stuff at the end of the day, it's something that we're channeling from the earth, from the ether, from spirit, not just some ideas that come up out of our head, out of nowhere. And I think, what we talked about in terms of commercialization and the art world and stuff like that, that's the problem right there, that nothing is coming out from spirit anymore, but just these market manipulations, which is, again, not art. So, I mean, it's hard to, anyway, I just wanted to add that. It's hard to put a price on what you do.
It's what?
It's hard to put a price on your work. It's hard to, it's hard to sell your stuff, which is
Yeah.
which makes it no less art, which makes it probably more art.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, I do have a photographic practice. So
Mm-hmm.
I last year I sold some photos that are kind of more
Mm-hmm.
observing, but it's like a few photo series I have with probably now tens of thousands of photos, and I have old
Mm-hmm.
paintings I'm still selling, and they
Mm-hmm.
look very colorful. So they were just at New Ink there installed for
Mm-hmm.
a brief second. So I do
Mm-hmm.
have materialized works in that sense, but I like what you
Mm-hmm.
said about about the kind of disconnect, because I think a lot of society and just like highlighted in the art world is very disembodied in a way and very mind driven, and a lot of people are not able to self-regulate or just like feel there's like other, other energetic sources, or like we are more aligned with the universe than we think. Literally, we reductively we reduced in think and reflect on. So I think a more embodied art practice, creative practice, and artworks that open up more perceptions to broader perceptions to people will help. And I do, yeah. So that's what got me into that, actually, just learning that, oh, I have more senses than, those senses that are promoted in everyday culture, and like I'm more than my visual sense. I think a lot of this culture is very visual. So there's like in
Mm-hmm.
technology and in art, it's just like the visual cortex of the brain instead of,
Mm-hmm.
integrating more the heart, the nervous system. We're one of the
Mm-hmm.
few species that can become aware of our breathing, of our heart rate, of our internal organs, like whales and dolphins, which are arguably much smarter than us because they take good care of each other and of the
Yeah.
planet. They're very aware of their breathing and nervous system, and probably, of like all kinds of electromagnetic fields. That's also a sense we have. There's literally science on that we have a sense for electromagnetic fields, for the gravitational field of the earth, obviously, and so many other things that we're not trained in. And I think we could train our kids and they would pick it up faster, and we can train ourselves by using technology in a way. And that's why it got me into the use of AI, machine learning, and technology. Basically, how can we use this as biofeedback loops and to help us feel more alive and with the planet, with the earth. And then obviously I'm guiding those meetups at the garden, like probably well over 100 now or so over the last 3 years, and trying to keep that garden alive in Soho, which we will succeed, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's what I think, like, how can we be, we can be aware of our internal organs. Literally, it's called interoception, and we're not trained
Mm-hmm.
that way. And if we're not trained that way, then we're just going to keep ruminating in our thoughts and trying to make judgments about the world, where we can always come back to sensing, our belly breathing, our heart rate. And it doesn't necessarily take years of yoga practice, which, like friends of mine, like Eddie Stern and Wim Hof, and so they've trained themselves that way, but there's easier ways to be aware of this, and less rigorous ways. And I think that helps to have people something they come back to when like their mind is overwhelmed. And then, but oftentimes we're not, I mean, my parents didn't train me that way. I mean, and like the schools I was in, they didn't train me like what can I do aside from thinking. This is like maybe do a workout or something, but there wasn't anything of come back to your breathing, sense your muscles, relax your
Right,
muscles, and
right,
like
right.
breathe in the beautiful air, go to a park. And that's maybe something that was promoted, like this, like go outside, but still like not like the focus so much on breathing. And I think there's like a lot of senses we have that are not promoted or not used and not utilized, and which will help us to
Mm-hmm.
feel more aligned. And I think a lot of like the disconnect and not caring for the planet, or maybe saying we care, but then our behaviors are not doing that. Especially in the art world,
Reflective, yeah.
there's so much trash in the art world. I worked as a studio manager for some top artists, and so much
Mm-hmm.
trash being thrown away, and fashion as well. There's so much that got thrown away, and just because always like it's about the artwork, it's about the collector, it's about the museum, and then there's not really like a recycling process and making. I
No.
mean, some artists take that into consideration, but very few, I think. So, but it also comes
Yeah.
from like the art world not feeling integrated. I think like in whatever is being practiced there helps like human culture thrive. It's always just like how does it help that gallerist or that artist to thrive? So it's like a lot of ego and a lot of disembodied practices, I find.
Horrible. Well, that I try to think that when I come back to the artist, that it gives me some hope for the art world. But you're right. Sometimes I meet with artists and just the whole me. It just, it drowns me in me. And I just think to myself, well, they must have so much work to do to get beyond the me. If all they can do is think about me, I mean, that's a lot of freaking work still to be done on themselves. Painful.
Yeah, I think like just to me, I think it's so, I mean, I follow politics quite passionately these days because it's so fascinating, like what's happening just in front of our eyes. And I think it's just an extension of this me culture where somebody is obviously not able to self-regulate, is obviously changing his mind and lying, and is just motivated by his own, not even his own sanity or well-being, just like literally his ego and the ego of his family, and puts that above everything, including the standing of this country in the world and a lot, and separating this culture and this country, sadly, safety, especially like so much like racism that comes up. And I see it also like the art world is not really, I mean, except for criticizing it or so, oftentimes, I mean, the mainstream art world is not really contributing to a more unified culture and society and offering something that is actually going beyond the judgments and beyond the like, because then every judgment is oftentimes like a reinforcement of like separating tendencies. Right. And so how can we actually do something that brings people together? And I think the president before, at least like, I might not, be a fan of a lot of the policies and stuff, but at least there was like some, always like the notion of bringing people together. But it was also still back then like a very visual and tech culture driven. And I think there was not a lot of regulations how those tech gets implemented. And obviously Facebook helped to get this president elected, and like the whole tech and art world culture is very driven by like me and supporting that and that like ego and that self, instead of like so many other cultures. I mean, you mentioned Scandinavian cultures, but I think Scandinavian cultures oftentimes put society first. So it's normal that you pay taxes, but I think there's a lot of African, South American, Asian cultures that that very society first thing you do is community and building community and helping communities strive, and not like the ego. And so you're part of, you use your ego to help that community and that culture. And, and this art world kind of exemplifies how that's not necessarily the case. But I think there's
go ahead.
No, I think there's definitely really wonderful people working in the art world. So I just want to say gratitude to their work, even though they might not be mainstream and they might not be fully supported. I just want to, if they're listening, I please keep doing what you're doing. There's so many good people working in the arts. Yeah.
Please, when we get off of this call, send me some of their names. My list is getting short.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anyways, I think we spoke a lot. Is there anything you're working on now in a public space that people might be able to attend or go to? I don't know, maybe one of your breathing classes, or maybe an exhibition of the photographs, or I'm not sure what you're going to do next, but anything you want to tell people before we sign off?
Thank you for asking. I do have a weekly meetup at Elizabeth Street Garden on every Saturday at 1 p.m. 11 minutes, so 1:11. And I have other workshops always, usually promoted on social media or my website. But people are always like, if they want to see some of my photos or paintings or like the technology we have, like the virtual reality projects, there's one called Seeing Breath, like the ocean, SEAING breath. It's also on my website. I have that at New Ink, those devices. If people want to just experience them, they can come by. It's kind of a publicly accessible incubator. If somebody knows somebody inside, right next to the new museum, I'm always happy to demo things there to people and to help them, to exhibit them, or to promote other artists in that incubator space, or colleagues of mine and who work on similar things. They might not necessarily have the promotional capacities or passion for it, but they are there and they're doing beautiful work, and they might not be out there so much because they care so much for people and what they're doing. And like, it's a new ink, the community I can highly recommend. There's a lot of artists and members on their website too. And I don't have any like art exhibitions right now on the horizon, I think, but a lot of stuff is
But people
digitally
can
out there. And
follow
I'm
you.
also, yeah,
What's
and
your
like me, and
website?
so like Hannes Band, HANNES BEND, S, like Hannes, like with an S at the end, and then band.com. But yeah, people are always like welcome. I'm always happy to chat. Reach out to me via email or messages or something, and I like to chat. And people are interested in art, like what got me to this point, because I was like I was quite successful at some point with international solo exhibitions and stuff like that, and I was never happy. I always felt like, what's the next thing instead of just feeling just happy and grateful what I've experienced and helping others to strive. So I am always happy to share those experiences and then motivate others to maybe take a slightly different path than what is laid out right now in what's oftentimes called the art world. And so there's so many ways we as creators might be, even if we get recognized or not, but that what we're doing has a positive influence in the world and later be recognized, because I think those are hopefully things that will remain the beautiful work we can have in this world.
Yes. Well, I do think everyone has to find their own path. I mean, I agree with you. I feel the same, that at some point, if someone had told me, well, there's a simpler way, you don't have to do all of that blah, 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 fancy stuff, I would have been like, but why not? I'm doing it and I'm having fun, but still, I want to see what's next. I think everyone figures out eventually on their own. Even though we tell them or try to help them, they have to do it on their own.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Anyways, I thank you for this.
Yeah.
No, it's always
I
like,
love to be. I've been motivated a lot by people who've done a different path, because it's not necessarily so visible that there are other ways than to go this like ego me route, as you said. And so just hearing how other people were navigating that, and everybody had their own paths, but I think it's a lot about inspiring and motivating each other sometimes to find the courage and remain driven in alternative ways of creative practices, I think.
And to be open to alternative ways.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Yes. That's so true. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I haven't seen you for a while, but this short conversation has really reaffirmed my understanding of art and my enjoyment of it and my commitment to it. At the end of the day, this is what art should be about: helping people, connecting people, channeling stuff from the earth, from the spirit out to other people, make everyone's lives better, not just make a buck.
Yeah. No, and thank you so much for doing this podcast and being a friend and a supporter and being involved in the arts and co-creating art culture in a way that is meaningful and has just like it's like the true fosters curiosity and care, and it's really so necessary. Please keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. All right. Well, I'll let you go now and we'll catch up again sometime soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Join us next week for an episode with Swiss artist Clarina Bezzola. I think you'll really enjoy her interview as well. She tells us everything about her practice and her history here, working in New York for the last 30 years. Thank you from the Bees and Honey podcast.